Billy the Kid. You hear the name and you probably have a picture in your head, right? A charismatic, young gunslinger, a legend of the American West. But what if the story we all think we know is a complete lie? Today, we're going to peel back the layers of that myth to find the real person and the corrupt world that made him. 21. This is the number. It's the number that defines the entire legend. 21 kills, one for every single year of his life. It's the headline, the most famous fact about him. But here's the thing. It's also the biggest lie. So what if that whole story was just fabricated, cooked up to sell a bunch of books and to justify a killing? To really understand who William H. Bonney was, we first have to understand the world he was living in. And that world was the New Mexico Territory back in the 1870s. This wasn't just the Wild West you see in movies. This was a place where the line between a lawman and a criminal had been totally, completely erased by corruption. You see, the real villain in the Billy the Kid story isn't some dude in a black hat. It's this entity, this network known as the Santa Fe Ring. Think of them like a shadow government or a mob, but made up of politicians, lawyers, and businessmen who were using their power to control literally everything and get rich doing it. And this just shows you how deep the rot really went. You've got the attorney general, the big boss, at the very top. You've got the governor providing all the political cover. And then you go all the way down to the local level. And the county sheriff, William Brady, is basically their muscle. In Lincoln County, the law wasn't blind, it was a weapon. The whole conflict that made Billy the Kid famous, it wasn't about good versus evil. It was an economic war, plain and simple. On one side, you had the House, a total monopoly backed by the Santa Fe Ring. Then, this English rancher, John Tunstall, comes along and opens a competing store. He wasn't just starting a business, he was declaring war on the most powerful men in the territory. And as you can probably guess, this business dispute didn't stay a business dispute for long. It exploded into open warfare, a conflict that would tear a county apart and create a legend. This right here, this is the moment that lit the fuse. John Tunstall, Billy the Kid's boss and mentor, was gunned down. And not by outlaws, but by a posse acting under the authority of Sheriff Brady, the Rings guy. It was basically a state-sanctioned hit, and it demanded revenge. So in response, Tunstall's men formed this group called the Regulators. Now, they weren't just some vigilante gang. They were actually deputized by a justice of the peace, which gave them this thin little veil of legal authority to go hunt Tunstall's killers. And here's the detail that the legends always get wrong. Billy the Kid was one of their best fighters, no doubt, but he was never their leader. And this timeline just shows how fast things spun completely out of control. It was pure chaos. We're talking revenge killings, assassinations in the middle of the street, and it all ends in this massive 5-day siege where the U.S. Army gets involved. And get this, they didn't show up to restore order. They showed up to help the Ring's side win. The war was over, and Billy the Kid's side had lost. Big time. So, the war is lost, and the survivors are now wanted men. But a new governor arrives with an offer that could change absolutely everything, a chance for peace. This is the story of the deal that could have saved Billy the Kid and the betrayal that ultimately doomed him. The new governor, Lew Wallace, and here's a fun fact, he was actually busy writing the novel Ben-Hur while all of this was happening, he offers a pardon to most of the fighters. But there's a huge catch. Because the Kid was involved in the killing of Sheriff Brady, he's left out of the deal. He is now officially an outlaw with a price on his head. But the thing is, the Kid doesn't want to be an outlaw. In this incredible twist, he actually writes a letter directly to the governor. And in his own words, you can hear a young man who is just tired of running, who's looking for a way out, a way back to a normal life. So here is how this tragic deal went down. Governor Wallace, who needs witnesses to help him break the Santa Fe Ring, secretly meets with the Kid. He promises a full pardon if he testifies. The Kid agrees, submits to a staged arrest, and holds up his end of the bargain. He testifies. But the district attorney, who's a loyal Ring member, just blocks the pardon. The whole system was too corrupt. The governor's promise was worthless. Billy the Kid was completely and totally betrayed. With no legal options left and a target on his back, he did the only thing he could. He escaped. His one attempt to trust the law failed spectacularly, forcing him back into the life of an outlaw and cementing the very reputation he was trying so desperately to escape. His fate was pretty much sealed at that point. the final chapter of his life unfolds. But his death, well, that wasn't the end of his story. Not even close. In fact, it was just the beginning of the legend. The end came fast and without any ceremony. The new sheriff, Pat Garrett, tracked the kid to a dark room and shot him dead. There was no final gunfight, no blaze of glory, just a sudden, violent end for a 21-year-old on the run. And this is where the myth-making machine kicks into high gear. The legend says 21 kills, but historians have gone through every record. The real number? 9. Now, don't get me wrong, 9 is still a violent record, absolutely, but it's less than half of the legendary number. So where did 21 even come from? Well, let me introduce you to the men who built the legend. Pat Garrett needed to justify killing the kid in a dark room instead of arresting him. So he hired a ghostwriter, a guy named Ash Upson, to write a biography that would turn him into a hero. Then, decades later, another author, Walter Noble Burns, romanticized the story for a whole new generation. It was Upson who just invented the 21 men myth right out of thin air. It was a brilliant marketing tactic. It made the kid seem like this absolute monster, which in turn made Garrett look like a giant slayer. Then Burns came along and polished the story, turning a victim of corruption into a romantic rebel. And just like that, history was replaced by folklore. Here is another perfect example of how myth just completely distorts reality. For over 100 years, everyone believed the kid was left-handed because of this single photograph. But it's a tintype, which is a type of photo that creates a mirror image. The loading gate on his Winchester rifle is on the wrong side, which proves the image is reversed. He was right-handed, just like most people. So why are we still so fascinated by him? Because his story is bigger than just one outlaw. He came out of a world where the government was basically a criminal enterprise. He fought back against a corrupt monopoly. His life is this stark reminder of what happens when the system fails, and regular people are left with no choice but to fight back. In the end, we're left with a question that has no easy answer. Was he a cold-blooded killer who got what he deserved? Or was he a young man pushed into a corner by a corrupt system? A rebel who just refused to bow to power? Perhaps the truth, just like the man himself, will always be somewhere lost between history and legend. And that's exactly why, more than a century later, we're still telling his story.